come on, what are we doing here? Why is this thing not working? Oh, it says I'm live. How cute is that? Okay. Brightness in there. All right. Guys, sorry I'm a couple minutes late. Just trying to figure this stuff out, make sure it's all working. I see a few of you guys are hopping on. It's after 3, so we're going to get right into it. Manny, thank you for letting me know. Manny, if I'm live on Facebook or not live on Facebook, let me know. I think I am. Hey, looks like I am. Okay, great. Okay. And we got audio. Perfect. Okay, let's dive right into it. Get an idea of what's going on today. We've got a really large area of storm potential today. Give me 1 second. Okay, we're gonna go to this tab here. Make sure I'm not too zoomed in. I think I am. Okay. All right. So this is the current outlook for today. This is severe weather outlook, what we call a convective outlook. So this is our storm risk areas today. I am going to mainly focus on Oklahoma because that's where most of my audience comes from. There are a lot of storm chasers that have made the drive up to Illinois, Indiana for this moderate tornado driven risk up here. Other storm chasers are down here in Texas, expecting supercells along the dry line. And then there's a little bit lesser risk here into eastern Oklahoma, but it's not zero. And we'll dive into that here in just a second. Let's go ahead and show what the tornado threat looks like. Again, the highest tornado threat, at least in the forecast, is expected to be up here south of this warm front. However, that target does have some issues ongoing right now. There's a sea breeze coming off of Lake Michigan that is pushing a little bit further south than generally what you would like to see if you're a storm chaser, a little bit further south than modeled. So cold, stable air may be fighting with some of the supercells that developed there. And it also looks like maybe some of the mid-level ascent that was progged to come out this afternoon to kick off storms might be a little bit weaker than anticipated. But again, there's a lot of storm chasers up there. I still expect some tornado activity, pretty good shear profiles this evening, really good instability. Further south, this is a second area. You can see they've just kind of washed a broad zone of tornado potential extending from the Great Lakes all the way down to the Big Bend area of Texas. That includes the majority of Oklahoma, all of eastern Oklahoma, and a 5% tornado threat with a hatched area there. That's a level 1 intensity, so possibly up to EF2 tornadoes there in this zone through eastern Oklahoma. But again, the risk is broad, and it's going to be kind of hit and miss with some of the tornadic activity. As far as wind goes, got a little bit of potential for damaging winds, especially down here in the southern target, not so much up in the northern target. Oh, wait, what? Oh, that's hail. And then for hail, the highest chance for significant hail is going to be into the Big Bend area, extending up through the rolling hill plains, and then into northwest Texas, extending up into southwest Oklahoma, and then another area up here with the main wave ejecting into the Midwest, and then you have a secondary low down here. So we've got a broad brush threat for hail, wind, and tornado activity through tonight for a large area of the central United States into the Midwest. And that's why we're on here today talking about it. So next, we're going to look at satellite and give you guys an idea of what the atmosphere is doing right now. So I'm focused on Oklahoma. I may jump around here a little bit from region to region. We're going to start with Oklahoma. Tulsa's right in here. So we've got quite a bit of cloud cover that's pushing off to the east. And most of this is mid and high level clouds. You can see there's low level clouds, cumulus clouds developing in Oklahoma. And if you look out to the west, we've got a lot of activity that's starting to develop here. And this is mid-level ascent attendant to our upper low that's coming out. And so we're getting rising motion in the atmosphere, and we're not too far off from convective initiation out here. Now, granted, this air mass out here is dry. So a lot of this activity that's developing in the Panhandle, eastern New Mexico, a lot of this would be elevated behind the dry line. So you're talking about high-based showers and thunderstorms. But as those move into warmer air, or if new activity develops along the dry line into western Oklahoma this evening, then we would have a higher threat for severe weather, especially more of a supercellular threat. One of the things that's a little bit of a concern today in regards to your supercell potential is you don't have a ton of wind directional change between a mile and about 3 miles up in the atmosphere. I'm looking right now at these are, I'm looking at current photographs. We're going to zoom this in a little bit here. Okay, so on this map, what we're looking for is the positive blue area on these plots. And you can see out here, there's not a whole lot of low-level shear. And the low-level shear is good down here in the Big Bend area down this way. It's pretty weak through here. You've got deep layer shear, but you don't have a lot of low-level shear. That low-level shear looks a lot better into eastern Oklahoma. And that low-level shear looks pretty good extending up into the Midwest. So I'm just going to plop this down. I don't know. We're just going to go east of I-35 and see what our... Oh, I always forget. When you hit that part of it, it casts the photograph. So you can see our photograph here. We've got a little bit of low-level shear. There's a little bit of curvature here, and it's a long, straight photograph. So this definitely would favor some splitting storms, and you've got, I could see this growing fairly quickly into a line of storms as the convection develops with so much straight shear aloft. There's not a lot of turning there. Now we're looking at instability. We've got, according to this Mesonet analysis, we've got 2,000 to 3,000 CAPE across a broad area of Oklahoma. So we actually have more instability than we had last Friday. On the downside, we don't have quite as favorable wind fields as we had last Friday, but still there's plenty there. This is mixed layer CAPE, 2,500 here. This shows that we're nearly uncapped down here. And then I'm going to go to actual thermodynamic SKU-T maps here. And we're just going to give this, I guess we'll start, I'm going to start around the Oklahoma City area. And we'll give this a look. Oop. So looking at this, that's a decent sounding. We've still got a little bit of capping here, but we're pretty much eroded. But we still have a little bit of a layer of warming here that's probably eating in a little bit to our low-level thermos here. But all in all, this is nearly uncapped. I mean, this is definitely, its cap is being removed. So we're nearly freely convective. Got pretty steep lapse rates right here. So this definitely favors some hill growth. Good moisture profile up through 850. Got some mid-level drying through here. So this, all in all, it's a pretty strong looking thermodynamic sounding here coming out of the Norman area. I'm going to come back up towards Tulsa, kind of look at what we have going on here. We have a little bit more capping. You can see this dashed line. This is your positive buoyancy. We've got some capping right here above 850, but you can see you got a pretty big area of positive buoyancy above that and a decent amount below that. So again, we've got the potential here for quite a bit of energy for the atmosphere to work with this evening. Got a little bit of high clouds, mid-level clouds you can see here that have an erode, but very good moisture profile here. Pretty unstable. Good shear profiles. We're a little weak here in the 850 to 700 layer. Only 25 knots on these, at least on the meso analysis, but we're really good upstairs. A lot of strong flow aloft. Not much veering from 850 above. So this could favor linear development, storms quickly merging together into a line. And that's kind of what we've been seeing in the data today. I'm going to go back to satellite real quick. I'm going to switch sectors. I just want to touch on some of the other areas real fast as well. So coming down here further into Texas, you can see here as it's loading, the satellite's loading, you're having convective initiation taking place here. Permian Basin, kind of north of the Big Bend area into the rolling hill country of West Texas. So definitely event is about to get underway here, and they should be issuing that tornado watch. So there is going to be a threat for tornadoes with any sustained supercell that's able to turn to the right and tap into the low level shear. A lot of instability out here today. So very large to gigantic hail over 3 inches of diameter is probably the main threat, along with damaging winds, and then lesser threat, but definitely a distinct threat for a tornadic storm or two to take off. And then what we think is going to happen with this is it'll grow into more of a complex or a line of storms as it races east this evening. And I'm going to jump up here real quick. I don't want to ignore the main target area today. So looking at satellite here, it looks like you do have some ascent that's moving right through here. So there's a zone of ascent impinging on this boundary. But if you notice in the clouds here, look at this, that southward push through here, that's that cool lake breeze. You've got the Chicago area with temperatures that were running earlier in the 40s. Let me refresh this map real quick and see what it shows. Yeah, it still has the Chicago area in the 30s and 40s. And that front has pushed pretty far south. I mean, you got 40, 40, 54 here. So you're down along that I-80 corridor and even maybe south of there where that biggest threat is right now, because you've got stable air that has eroded, or not eroded, that's embected down into part of the warm sector that was Prague today. So that's creating some uncertainty, to be honest, about the extent of this tornado threat today. If I go here and I put in my SPC graphics, I'll put day one tornado probs. And here's your highest probs, and you can see that front now is eaten down into a third of this 15% area. And I don't see this area having any potential for tornadoes because you're just too cool and stable. Large hail potential is definitely there for this zone. But any tornado potential is going to be a little bit further south, more to the southern side of this risk area, if any discrete storms are able to mature and take off. And we still expect storms to develop, but we may not quite see as high of a tornado threat as maybe earlier anticipated, or maybe that threat being even more localized to maybe one or two storms. It's still a lot of uncertainty with how this is going to evolve, but this environment down here is pretty ripe. So if you get a supercellular storm mode down here this afternoon and evening, then you would definitely have a chance of tornadoes. One concern would be with how cool the air is north of this boundary. Even though you're clearing up, it's still very cool. As convection develops and moves over the boundary, will it reinforce the cold pool to push the boundary south? And so that could be an underlying factor. So if I was chasing, I would definitely be trying to stay away from this boundary directly, since it still appears to be moving and you've got a lot of cold air momentum behind it. I'd probably try to target a little bit further south. But again, if you're through north central Illinois into northwest Indiana today, like there's a heightened tornado threat there. So briefly touched on that. We're going to go back to our area. Again, our area being Oklahoma. Most of my viewers are here in the Oklahoma area. I'm going to go to a localized map of radar, or satellite, excuse me. And again, just kind of go back. Seeing quite a bit of cloud streets here, indicative of low-level stability that's actually waning. You can see less of the streets and more bubbly here. But you do have some low-level shear underneath that inversion. And so you're seeing organization of those clouds in the streets. And as we get convective initiation out this way, expect storms to fire into southwest Oklahoma and then quickly race northeast this evening, reaching the Tulsa area probably between 10 and 11 o'clock, midnight, somewhere in that time frame. We're going to go back. I'm going to show you Mesonet here. So again, we have higher dew points than we had on Friday, especially into eastern Oklahoma. We've got dew points pushing 70 degrees. We're 69, 70, 71. Honestly, guys, this is the type of moisture and instability that you see late April and May, not early March. We are way ahead of schedule on instability. If that's any indication of what we're dealing with this tornado season, then that means that every system that comes out that has this kind of instability has a lot more energy to work with. It creates a more dynamic environment, and honestly, I think that the heat and humidity day is what really pushes our severe weather threat this evening. We have the wind shear to go with it, even though that wind shear isn't as ideal as what we saw last Friday. Friday had really good shear profiles that favored tornadic supercells, and that's what we ended up with an outbreak of significant tornadoes across northeast Oklahoma. Today, the wind shear is strong, but the directional shear, the change of wind speed as you go up in height is a little bit different than what we'd see, I guess, textbook wise. But still, there's plenty there, and it definitely looks like we've got potential for an MCS tonight that could have embedded circulations. We're going to go ahead into some model data. I'm going to do this pretty brief. I'm not going to focus too much. The cams have not been great lately. These models, their accuracy hasn't been the best. So I haven't been taking these. I've been taking the data with a grain of salt, especially last Friday. In fact, once I got into the afternoon last Friday, I stopped looking at the hurricane. And honestly, did that in the morning. I realized it wasn't initializing well, and so I was just like, this model's way off. And again, it's probably not. I mean, you got to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, it just randomly pops the storm at 3 o'clock, which is right now. This is the 18Z run that came out. Actually, do I have a newer one? I should have a newer run. Yeah, let's go to 19Z. Let's see if it still has a rogue storm. So it got rid of that. So this model's pretty insistent on developing the first storms kind of along this wind shift. I don't know if this is truly the cold front, but there's a bit of a wind shift here in the Texas Panhandle into northwest Oklahoma. And you may get a supercell or two to fire out of that. And then other convection is it's progging other storms to develop down here in northwest Texas, southwest Oklahoma. This will be at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. That's as far out as this model run goes. So you can see by 7 o'clock, this is getting towards sunset. You've got activity in southwest Oklahoma. You've got what looks to be a potential helicity track here. So that's suggesting that there may be rotation. And you can see a little bit of, so this is indicating there's potential for severe weather by the time we get to 7 p.m. from northwest Texas and southwest Oklahoma, and then a separate area in northwest Oklahoma. And I'll just go ahead and switch back to 18Z. Again, just don't take the model verbatim. Like, it's not, what is this saying that no model is accurate, some are useful? Like, none of these are 100% right, but sometimes they can be useful to kind of figure out what's going to happen. So as we go towards, this is 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. This is probably right here. This is a pretty strong look from a squall line. You've got a Boeing segment right here, and I could see there being some QLCS tornado potential right through this zone if this were to verify. And it probably won't look like exactly like that, but it definitely has a Boeing segment. And then it definitely maintains, again, you have Tulsa. If this were to verify, you have basically I-40 north kind of in a part of the line where it's bent back to the northwest. And this is the area that we have to watch for embedded tornadoes if this were to verify, especially when you have little cells popping out in front of it and then they merge with that line on this bent back part. You get these little inflection points that we call them, and that's where the spin ups happen, and they're very quick. The good news for this storm system, this is going to be a one hit, all right? We're not looking at multiple rounds of severe weather. It's a one and done tonight. It comes through pretty quick. This is 10 o'clock. Tulsa's right here, so it'll be knocking on our door between 10 and 11. 11 o'clock, it's pushing through the metro with some severe weather threat. And then by the time you get to midnight, we're on the back side of it. The rain should be clearing pretty quickly. And then it's off and out of here in the overnight hours. And then actually, it does have a little bit of activity developing towards daybreak with the cold front, but that doesn't look to be severe. You may have some heavy downpours, maybe a strong storm in that. But again, the main severe weather threat is a one-hit punch this evening. And again, it looks like the line is probably at its strongest in south central Oklahoma. This is also where originally the tornado threat was higher for Oklahoma, but they've expanded that 5% all the way through. So it's a pretty uniform threat over, like, basically meaning that this threat is possible anywhere within the eastern 2/3 of the state. I'm gonna look at just see what it kind of does with the helicity on this. So it's got some pretty strong signals here, and you get signals all the way up through Tulsa. So right now it's showing either side. And again, don't take the locations verbatim, but it does show quite a bit of updraft rotation this evening with these storms, even if they're embedded in a line. So again, the other day we dealt with storms that were, supercellular. They were individual storms. The one that came through Bristow, North Tulsa, up through Owasso, Claremore, or Collinsville up towards Oologah. That storm was a supercell right in front of a line of storms. And so the storms immediately behind it, their downdrafts were nudging the lead supercell to produce tornadoes. They were actually enhancing that storm's ability to acquire low-level rotation. And then we had the additional supercell that developed further south that evening that hit the Beggs area with the tragic fatalities there. And then we had another tornado in Broken Arrow, and then another one up near Inola. So we had multiple rounds of supercells last Friday. And again, most of the activity was supercellular. Then you had kind of a quasi-linear system or a complex of storms evolve out of that as we went into late evening. The data right now suggests, when I say the data, I'm talking about the cams that we're seeing, but also the wind shear profiles that we're seeing right now. They favor more of a linear mode today. So that means more of a line of storms that can limit the higher end tornado potential. We are in a hatched area, so we could see a significant tornado even in the line, but this isn't the conditional tornado threat isn't as high for us as it is up in Illinois, Indiana. I don't think the tornado threat is quite as substantial as it was Friday, and I think I say that it's just I don't think it's going to be so much supercellular tornadoes, but more QLCS. They're shorter lived. You can get EF2 plus out of QLCS, but it takes kind of a perfect recipe of storm interactions and low level shear to get that. And it's possible, but regardless, like, I'm not trying to overhype this, guys. Like, we have tornado potential. I don't think, at least my honest opinion, I don't think it'll rival Friday night. I don't think it's going to be that intense, but I do expect potentially a few tornado warnings this evening and maybe a few spin ups. And again, that moves through the Tulsa area 10 p.m. to midnight. 11 o'clock hour seems to be the main threat of when this pushes through the metro, quickly pushing out of the area. It'll be moving to the Oklahoma City area earlier. That'd be more of the 8 to 9 o'clock hour, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there, depending on how quickly the storms develop and mature. But again, we're expecting that formation of storms, a development zone here to be, again, you can see, and it seems like the HRRR, give it credit here, is definitely looking like we're going to get the first activity to develop here in northwest or the northeast Texas panhandle into northwest Oklahoma. And that's what the recent runs of the HRRR is suggesting. And then you can see our cumulus field is expanding and deepening here into southwest Oklahoma, northwest Texas. So that should kick off storms here with that area in the next couple of hours. And again, as we head towards sunset, these storms will develop into a forward propagating line of storms that will track east and northeast through the state, producing severe weather as it goes. So again, main threats are going to be damaging winds, some hail threat, and then brief tornado spin ups this evening along that line. Probably somewhere after 7. I would say somewhere between 7 p.m. and probably midnight would be the highest threat. And again, it's along the leading edge of the line. Once the leading edge of that squall line gets past you and your minutes now into the heavy rain and hail and the temperature's cooling off, the tornado threat's past you. It'll be within the first few minutes of that line arriving where you have the tornado potential. They tend to develop right on the leading edge, in contrast to supercells, where the tornadoes develop on the back edge of the storm on the southwest flank. So, a little bit different dynamics on how you get these tornadoes versus our traditional supercellular tornadoes. But regardless, it doesn't really matter when it's affecting your area and causing damage. So, I do plan on being out this evening. I probably will not leave until probably 6 or 7. I could go down southwest and play the early stuff, but I'm going to stay closer to home and just play this as it moves up the turnpike our way and then see what happens with it. But again, I do expect a watch to be issued, more than one watch, most likely. Wouldn't be surprised if it's a tornado watch just because of the amount of instability we have today and the amount of speed shear, and there is some directional shear, and that low-level jet is forecast to strengthen. In fact, let's go ahead and look at that real quick. I'm gonna let's see. Let's go with the NAM. I'm gonna miss you, NAM, when they get rid of you. We all hate you until you're gone, and then we'll all miss you. Okay, here we go. 850 millibar wind speeds. So you can see here, we've got a. Actually, let's start it back at the beginning. Okay. Your winds a mile above the ground are out of the southwest today, so that low level jet is veered. Your mid level winds are out of the same direction, so that's why your supercell threat today is lower, your squall line threat is higher, because your shear vectors are somewhat parallel to the boundary that's going to initiate the storms, and they're going to tend to want to form into line segments or a complete squall line, which is what the HUR is showing. So you can see as we go into evening, this is 7 p.m., you can see the winds increase here. We're getting brighter yellows, and then reds are even stronger. So here, this is by 10 p.m., we've got a low-level jet racing of over 50 knots into northeast Oklahoma. So this is right in front of the squall line as it's coming in. And so you've got a ton of low-level shear. In fact, we're just going to drop the forecast sounding here. And so really interesting sounding here. And this could be, again, I don't know how this is going to affect the tornado potential because with QLCS tornadoes, they form a little bit differently than supercell tornadoes. So there is a weakness in the flow, 850, 700 millibars. That could be problematic for tornado production. You can see it in the hodograph. What typically is more of a traditional hodograph would be curving out like this and then just going this way like that. But the fact that this hodograph falls off back through here, above 1 kilometer, there's a weakness in the winds here, and so that could be problematic with tornado production. But again, QLCS tornadoes tend to be mostly focused right at the surface. They don't necessarily have deep mesocyclones that you see with supercells. So this weakness may not matter as much as it would maybe with the tornadic supercell environment versus the QLCS type environment we may see tonight. But regardless, you've got pretty good instability. You do have a little bit of poor lapse rates here in your lowest 3 kilometers here, and your 0 to 3 kilometer lapse rate is only 6.4, which is, it's also nighttime. You don't expect crazy low level lapse rates after dark at 10 p.m. because you're not getting heating here ever at all anyway. But regardless, this is a cap free environment on this sounding. So this would definitely support vigorous convection. So it definitely bears watching. So I'm going to recap one more time. I'm going to wrap this up for you guys. I appreciate you guys jumping on here with me. I've got a pretty good turnout today for what type of streaming I've done so far early in this season. Let me go back to Storm Prediction Center here. Share this tab instead. Zoom this back out so you can see it. And then let's look at meso discussion. So we still don't have any mesoscale discussions for us yet. There is a tornado watch that they have issued down here in Texas. That watch does go until 10 p.m. A few tornadoes likely, with a couple intense tornadoes possible. Scatter large hail and isolated very large hail events to 4 inches in diameter likely. So again, the latest convective outlook. This is the newest one that came out at 3 p.m. They maintain that risk for eastern Oklahoma. This is similar to the risk that we had on Friday as far as a probabilistic number standpoint. That doesn't mean it's going to happen the same way. It won't. It'll be a little bit different. But regardless, we have a fairly high risk for severe weather this evening. Again, we're a level 2 out of 5, but still pretty widespread storms this evening. So do expect sporadic severe weather, some tornado threat, some large hail threat, damaging wind threats. There's going to be heavy rain, lightning. The good news, at least for flooding, the storms are fairly quickly paced. The line isn't overly wide. There's not a big precip shield behind the line, so it should clear out fairly quick. It's just another great opportunity for rain as we start the growing season. Definitely about time to get out and mow. I wonder if some of you guys have already mowed. My grass is already mostly weeds right now, so we got to get that treated and get mowed. But that season's upon us, so we're going to get beneficial rains. There will be some severe weather. So again, if you go to bed early, make sure you have your phone charged and on, so that way you can get severe weather warnings on your phone. And if you're going to stay up, 10 o'clock to midnight, that's when you're going to want to be watching the weather. And I will be out with Fox 23. James Adelot and the rest of the Fox 23 severe weather team will be in studio giving live reports as this evolves. And James and Laura did a great job last Friday. I think they went 6 hours straight of weather coverage. And shout out to Laura because she did the evening show, the late night show the night before, the morning show, and the noon show before 6 hours of severe weather coverage Friday night. So she worked a lot. Mike Grogan was off last week on vacation. Of course, we'd have severe weather when one of the meteorologists takes off. That's usually how it works. And generally, early March is not like near our peak of severe weather. It's usually right before it gets started. Most of our severe weather seems to happen later in the month. Beyond, but this year we're off to an early start. Spring got here early. The good news is after today, we've got quiet weather. Spring break next week is going to be very quiet, and I don't see much severe weather potential until at least later in the month, towards the end of the month, or maybe even early April. So we've been active, but we're about to quiet down. We're going to cool off, go into a more tranquil, kind of an early spring pattern versus what today feels like a mid to late spring outside, with temps pushing low 80s and dew points pushing nearly 70 degrees. So again, severe weather threat tonight, clearing out overnight, and then tomorrow should be a cool, nice day outside. So that's all for now. I thank you guys for watching, and then check back later. I may do another live update before storms get into the metro area. I will be out on the road and tracking storms this evening, so you can catch me on Fox 23 and 102.3 KRMG. Thank you guys for tuning in.